Subscribe now and press the bell icon. Never miss an update.
Hi everyone and welcome to a very special episode of Let's Talk with Parul. Well, women's cricket is, especially in India, may date back to the 1970s. But for people like me, growing up in the 80s and 90s, all I knew about was men's cricket. It may have taken decades, but women's cricket is slowly and surely coming into its own. And particularly in the last decade or so, we have had great cricketing icons who've not only shown in their own career path, but also had a tremendous impact on bringing women's cricket into the limelight. We are so honored to have on our panel today one of the most reputed figures in women's cricket, Lisa Sthalekar. Lisa is known as an explosive all-rounder playing for Australia. She's equally adept with bat and ball. She was the first ever woman cricketer to complete the double of 1,000 ODI runs and 100 wickets. She's won the ICC Women's Player of the Year in successive years. She's been the ICC Women's T20 Player of the Year and now has also been inducted in the ICC Cricket Hall of Fame. Yet another fabulous recognition for Lisa comes in the book 100 Immigrant Women Who Changed the World, a part of the Rebel Girls series. Welcome, Lisa. We're so honored to have you here today.
Thanks very much for having me.
I'm so thrilled also to introduce our next guest, Smriti Mandhana. BCCI has named her as the best women's international cricketer in 2018. ICCI has awarded her with Best Female Cricketer of the Year award. She was also named the ODI Player of the Year by ICC at the same time. The accolades are many, but they all go to describe Smriti as one of the brightest cricketing stars of India and an idol of many aspiring young cricketers already. Welcome, Smriti. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
We've met the champions, and now let me introduce the cheerleader. Radha Lal Gupta is a presenter at Women's Crick Zone. She's a freelance sports content creator and a vocal advocate for women's sports and gender equality in sports. Thank you so much, Radha. There's a lot of stuff that we want to ask you also, and it's great to have you on the panel.
Thank you for having me. It's hard to follow those two introductions, but I'm glad to be here.
Absolutely. It's like we said that there are champions and there are cheerleaders, and we need them both for the sake of, especially women's cricket in India and of course globally. Let me start with you, Lisa. You have a very close connection with India, the country of your birth. So, I'd just like to ask you for a quick overview. I know it's going to be very difficult, but briefly, tell us about your journey from Pune, from an orphanage in Pune, to, the ICC Hall of Fame, to being the Australian cricket captain. I mean, there's so much. And of course, it's not the end. There's much more. But till now, give us a brief overview of the journey.
Yeah, 3 weeks of age. I was adopted. My father's obviously born and bred in India. Bombay. My mother was white English, and they were looking for another child to fill their family. They were actually looking for a little boy, but in the end they fell in love with me for some reason. So I was the lucky one. And through my father's work, we lived in the US for 18 months, Kenya, and my family were all Australian citizens, and we were on our way through Australia for me to become an Australian citizen. And my father, we were planning to go off to Kingston, Jamaica in the West Indies for his work. But in the end, we settled in Australia. And from there, you could see straight away that the outdoors was very prominent in Australian culture, whether it be by the beach or in a park, and playing sport was certainly that. And fortunately for me, I enjoyed playing sport and being outdoors. And through my father's interest and love of cricket, that's how I fell in love with the game. And once I realized women actually played and that there was a pathway and there was a domestic competition and the Australian women's cricket team was successful, I was set and I was ready to go from probably the age of 15, wanting to play for my country.
How awesome and good for us. I mean, that's really the way that you've come into cricket, and that's the way we've known you. And I think it's been a boon for women's cricket all over the world.
I don't know if it's good for us, bad for us. She would have represented India as well, right?
Oh, well, that's a point there.
You wouldn't have wanted me in your team. I would have been the absolute pest.
Come on. No,
it worked for somebody. It would have worked for us.
To have you.
Absolutely, yeah. Smriti, a little bit about your journey. You started playing at 9. I mean, as in for the under 15 team, you were playing at the age of 9. So, and I know there was a lot of encouragement from your home, from your father, your brother. So tell us a little bit about how your cricketing journey began and, well, till now.
Well, I think I feel there's my age group and the ones which played before. I think we all mostly started playing with, we used to go to practice with our brothers or someone of our family should have an interest. So my father and my brother both were into cricket. I used to just tag along with Bhaiya to go to practice. I used to pick up balls for him mostly and probably get 20-30 balls at the end of the session because I was like probably 5 or 6 when that time, and they should be like probably I might get hit by the ball, so it's not very much. And yeah, I like I used to just play for fun actually. I didn't really know much about I didn't even follow men's cricket or women's cricket. I didn't know anything. I just loved batting, and that's I used to just enjoy batting. So that's how I started playing. And then of course my mom dad wanted to know more about women's cricket. They wanted to see how the pathway is, and at that time it was under Women's Cricket Association (WCA). It was not under BCCI. That's when I got selected for under 15 when I was 9. And so, yeah, so the journey actually just started from then and then I got into like when I went and played for the first time and I saw all the girls looking way better than me. I came back and I was like, I told my dad, come on, Papa, I need to work on a lot of things. Let's get back to work. And then I think that's when I just thought of playing for India, representing India, and wanting to do well for India.
So it all starts with a passion for the game, obviously. I think that's really the beginning, the starting point of it. Radha, which brings me to my question, to the question for you. So, like I mentioned that, as I was growing up, cricket has been a craze in India for generations and, all of us were much involved with it. The problem is that for generations, it was completely male dominated. And I would imagine that yours is probably the first generation that is seeing women's cricket much more than we did. But I'd love to know from you that at the ground level, how much are young people aware of women's cricket? How much are they into it? And what is the ground reality? I'd love to know that from you.
Yeah, so personally, from my story as well, is there enough awareness? I don't think so. But has it grown exponentially in the last few years? Very much so. And I think, at least for my example, I can put myself in that young people category. For me, viewing women's cricket is similar to men's cricket. I mean, it's the same format, same number of players. It's thrilling, entertaining sport. But the difference I find, and I really love this about women's cricket and women's sport in general, is the accessibility. And I'd love to share a quick example. So for me, the first time I sort of heard of women's sports or women's cricket was the 2017 World Cup. I put on the TV and there was Team India women playing. And then in 2019 was the women's IPL in Jaipur. And I convinced my father to drive me down there for the final. And so we were sitting in the stands watching the game, and Smriti's team wasn't in the final that year. So I see Smriti and the Trailblazers team sort of walk and sit on the other end of the same stand. And I told my father that's Smriti. And he said, go up, why don't you go up? And I had come prepared with my hat and my marker, had everything ready, but it took me the entire first inning to muster up the courage to go to Smriti because I'd just seen her on TV. She was this superhero for me. So I go up in the innings break and the usher immediately says, sorry, don't disturb her. We don't want anyone here. And I didn't want to create a scene. So I immediately turned around. I said, no problem. And then this is going to sound like a movie scene, but I heard a voice behind me go, no, it's okay. No problem. And I turn around and Smriti is looking up at me and smiling and saying, did you want an autograph? Did you want a signature? So I said, that would be lovely. And I gave her my hat and she signed it and I still have it. It's one of my most prized possessions. So I think that accessibility, and that's something that we don't see too much in the men's game. And that humility from being superheroes on the field to being humans off the field, that's the difference. And I really don't want women's sport to lose that because that's something that really drives me towards it. So, Smriti mentioned that she picked up the bat and ball thanks to her brother and her father. But I can guarantee everyone listening, the younger girls coming up are going to pick up a bat and ball thanks to Smriti and the girls that we're watching on TV right now. So I think that's really special. And that's the unique nature of viewing women's cricket for me.
I totally agree. Absolutely.
So, luckily, you did that, Smriti, huh? Lucky you didn't turn her away.
Yeah, yeah. This is a
No,
lesson
but
actually. Next time I'm not gonna say no for anything.
absolutely.
No, you're a nice person.
These are the memories which are most precious for a fan, you know. Being able to get the attention of your hero, your icon is huge. It's just tremendous. So yeah, I'm glad that worked out
But
for you
frankly,
guys.
I didn't have any job on that day. I was just a spectator that day. I wasn't playing. I didn't have any work to do.
You did actually did a little bit of commentary with us. Remember you came
Yeah, I did come. Yeah. I found
Yeah,
it
that
really
was
tough.
fun.
I don't think I'm coming back again there.
Okay, so Lisa, I have a question for you now, which is,
Yeah.
well, it's basically, you know, you in one of your past interviews, you've mentioned that casual racism was present in, you know, the periphery of your world, but because you had sports as, you know, such a focus area, that enabled you to deal with it quite comfortably. What about gender? You also have mentioned that at some point of time you didn't even know that women play cricket professionally, you know. So did you feel that you had to ever fight harder being a woman playing cricket?
Oh, certainly when you look around your environment, all you see is men and boys. You know that you're a little bit different, but it's the same with obviously being of Indian descent in a white society. I certainly just thought I tanned well. I kind of used all of those things to my advantage, to be honest. I never saw it as something that would stop me achieving what I wanted to do. I probably found being a female coming into the commentary world is something a little bit harder, because obviously everyone is used to a male voice commenting on the game. They're not used to a female's opinion or the pitch or the tone. And even the word simply batter seems to irk a lot of traditionalists, because they say, no, it's batsman. And my argument is, if there is a gender neutral term that is able to depict the exact same thing that you're trying to articulate, why wouldn't you use it? So I probably found it a little bit harder coming into the commentary world because of that. So it's taken a bit of time, and even educating my co-commentators. So the amount of times we have man of the match, and I said, why don't we just call it player of the match? I really do think, especially as a commentator, language, and Radha would agree from a journalistic point of view as well, language is really important. Now, if we don't change it, who will? So it's up to us that are currently within the game and the rise in women's sport in general. It's up to all of us to make these little changes in how we speak, how we describe something, so that we are inclusive for everyone that's tuning in and watching.
And how simple that is. I mean, what are we doing? We're changing simple terminology that's being used. Batter, perfect. Bowler, batter. Player of the match. I think it should just be implemented immediately. And I'm so glad you're taking the lead in that.
I
I'm so
think
glad.
from a terminology aspect as well, breaking the gender default is something that I talk to my friends about as well. You don't have to, usually cricketer is male and then women's cricketer is female. We shouldn't have it like that. It should either be male
Correct.
cricketer and female cricketer, or just cricketer in general, which works as well. So I think once that default is broken in conversation and in reporting, in content, commentary, as Lisa's mentioned, when that default is broken, that preconceived notion in our heads, which is what a stereotype is, right? That cricketer, okay, male. So when that stereotype or that preconceived notion is broken, that's when we'd really be able to progress in the gender parity in sport, especially.
Totally agree. Yes. Smriti, while on this subject, we're talking about women in sports, women in cricket. And I know for you, there was a lot of support from your family, a lot of encouragement. In fact, that's how it all began. But I'm sure you must have heard different stories from your teammates. There must be, different experiences coming together in that locker room there. So how difficult or easy is it to be a woman cricketer in India?
Well, I don't if I don't think I'm a good. I'll be fair if I comment on someone else's journey. But yeah, if I talk about my journey also, you're as a girl, if you're playing, I think you're always outnumbered. You're probably outnumbered by a lot of guys playing. So initially, it's very hard for a small girl to go into an academy and just start playing, because you don't see a lot of girls around, and then you don't know how to interact, how to start talking, and that I think that kind of a lot of girls at that age lose out interest because they don't feel that they can talk to someone because of course there are not many girls who are playing. And of course I think one point which I used to always feel offended with, I don't know if it makes sense for anyone, but I used to always often also know I used to feel bad about it, that if there's a if there's a misfield by any guy, or if something happens, he's always come to he used to like a fellow teammate used to tell him that why are you fielding like a girl? I'm part of that.
Oh,
I'm part of that team. So, and it happens. I feel it's not only in cricket, it happens in a lot of other sports, other places as well, other places as well. So I don't know why is bad fielding termed as why are you fielding like a girl? Just say why are you feeling bad. There's terms, as Lisa said, there's a term bad which is there. So there's a term you can say for a bad fielding. Why you have to always show that weak fielding or a bad effort is always termed to be as a girl's effort because of and if I think comparison, if a girl bats well or hits a long shot, they always say that, oh, she's hitting like a guy. Why can't a girl hit long? So I just feel that this when I was growing up, I used to feel really bad about, and I hope like somewhere it stops. I know I can't do much about it, but I hope that it stops because that kind of demotivates you when you're playing as a young girl. When you're 8 and 9, you don't understand much, so it can demotivate you. So I think these were the small little problems which probably I had when I was growing up, and I don't know if it makes sense, if like anyone's getting the point of why a weakness is considered to be girl. Like why is the bad thing
yeah.
considered to be like why are you doing it like a girl? So yeah, I think that should probably change. And it's not long. I just played a match 2 months back with guys in my district, and I hit a ball to a guy. He misfielded, and the guy from point is shouting, "Why are you fielding like a girl?" Where that was that ball was hit by me, which is a girl. So I don't know,
So
like this one thing, this one thing I feel is like I don't know why do you categorize these things like girl and boy? Boy feels well, girl feels bad,
yeah.
girl is slow, boy is fast. So I just feel that there are terms to be like you can say you're feeling bad, you're feeling good. Why do you have to categorize it? So I think that for me always was something bothering and is bothering, and I think will be bothering till it stops.
Absolutely. I mean, as far as ability is concerned, we can't genderize it, and we'd better stop genderizing all of these kind of terms. Ability and incompetence, or whatever it is, it cannot be attributed to a gender. These are the stereotypes we're talking about. These are the stereotypes which have to be smashed completely, and it's thanks to you. Thanks to you, Lisa. Thanks to you, Smriti, and Radha, all of you, who are contributing to actually getting rid of them. Smriti, we were talking about you being an idol. I'm already getting a lot of questions asking you for tips for young girls who would like to, become cricketers. We will come back to that. But Radha, my question to you is again, let's stay on this whole gender track just for a bit longer. You've talked about it also that ultimately sports history, sports interest, and whatever it is, sports, let's even talk about coverage, is all about individual stories. A lot of it is about, of course, there is your team sports, but you've got a lot of individual stories which come out. And we don't see that enough as far as women are concerned, do we?
We absolutely don't. I mean, when I got into understanding women's cricket and following it, I had to hunt for stories on all these athletes that I really looked up to. I had to find out where they'd come from, what their journey was like, because and for any girl who wants to sort of go up this pathway, they would like to know what the journey has been for the people at the top already. So for example, for me, I was that kid who played everything in the park. I wouldn't come home until it was dark. And when I came home, I would put on the sports channel and watch whatever was happening. And for about 10, 12 years, I did this. But there was one thing that was common. I would play with boys and I would come back to watch men's sports. And not just men on the field, but men in commentary, men in the preview and the match review. And it seemed normal to me. I didn't know any different. But when that 2017 World Cup came, it hit me like a truck, and a good truck, like a truck full of puppies and rainbows, because I was just starstruck and I was awestruck. And I could not believe that someone who looks like me was actually playing at the highest level representing the nation. And I think that's when female cricket and women's cricket zone sort of came into their nascent stages because there was this massive untapped market in the country, which was women's sports and women's cricket. And we're still tapping into that. It's still very undiscovered and unexplored. And it is a business. At the end of the day, people should see women's sports as a business because there are investments. If you put investments, you will get returns. We've seen that with Australia. We've seen that with New Zealand. And we're bound to see that with India and other countries as soon as we put in our investments and our time and money and energy into it. So I really believe that individual stories is a way to sell this. It's a way to expose the players and the teams to the market, who are the fan base, who are the people watching, who are the people who want to learn. And those individual stories, I mean, I really searched on YouTube for interviews and other things like that. Now I know that Smriti's favorite food is bhel, and I know how Shafali Verma has come out of Rohtak. You know, I know those little stories, and those are the stories that you want to know because those are the stories that inspire young girls and also normalize it for young boys. Because as Smriti mentioned, the experiences that she faces till today, seeing her on TV and seeing the women on TV normalizes it for young boys as well, that women can play and women play sports and at the highest level as well.
So true. I'm also getting a lot of requests for questions. So I'll just like to tell the viewers that please do put down your questions in the comments here. I'm keeping track of that. And if we have time, we'll definitely come back to that. I'll try my best. But in the meantime, Lisa, my question to you. You know, you're not only a great ambassador for women's cricket with all your achievements on and off the field, but you're also a passionate Adopt Change ambassador. You're supporting couples through the process of adoption. I'd love to know a little more about your work in this context.
Yeah, it basically came out of me obviously being very comfortable talking about the fact that I was adopted from a young age. I always knew I was adopted and it was nothing taboo or nothing to be ashamed of. I thought it was pretty cool. I thought it was a better story than everyone else. So I kind of reveled with that at school. But I did a function where I spoke about being adopted, and one of the board members from Adopt Change came and spoke to me and said, would you be comfortable being an ambassador? So I asked about the organisation. And basically, the organisation is about changing the policies in Australia because there is a lot of red tape when it comes to adopting. And there's a bad history in the Australian culture of taking Indigenous kids away from their families and putting them into white couples. So there's a lot of negative stereotype involved in that. So it was about breaking down that barrier, simply telling my story, which is a happy story, but also meeting a lot of other people who have been adopted as well, and learning a little bit about that process and how it goes. So it's not necessarily helping couples in that sense. It's more about championing the cause of ensuring that a kid in a foster system or going from an orphanage to a foster house, and that they don't have any real connections. They don't have stability in their life. And as human beings, we need love, support, tender care, and it's to need that to happen a lot quicker than what it does currently in Australia. But I'm hoping that when I get a chance to go back to Mumbai, it's only a couple of hour drive to Pune. I'd like to go back to my orphanage. I'm in touch with them, keep in touch with them. So hopefully you'll see some stuff on social media with me heading back to my orphanage.
Okay, right. So you're in touch. Of course, you've been coming to India through your childhood. This is not like the first few times you're here. You're very familiar with the country, aren't you?
Yeah, my grandmother was staying in Gumdevi in Bombay, and so school holidays I used to come and hang out. I think school was still going on, so I'd run up and down because we owned a school back then. So I'd run up and down inside all of the classrooms, being an absolute nuisance, and learned how to play carom there, fly kites. So I have very happy memories of being by Chowpatty Beach, and so Mumbai is very comfortable. India is very comfortable with me, and the more regularly that I've come back because of the IPL, mainly, the more I've fallen in love with the country again.
Right. Tell us a little bit about the book. I love the feature, the 100 immigrant women who changed the world. I love the stories that are there, and you are also a part of it. So tell us a little bit about that feature.
Yeah, look, Rebel Girls is an organisation that started in the US, and it's about ensuring when they wrote their first book, which was 2016, a staggering figure of only 19% of children's books had female role models.
Yeah.
And they wanted to break that down. They wanted to ensure that young girls would read about successful women, basically. So they did that first book, and then obviously the second book here is of 100 immigrant women who changed the world. And when they got in contact with me, I said, sure, happy to help out. And it's really quite colourful and just one page. So it's something that everyone can kind of accomplish per night, one page per night. And you have some fascinating stories. And I think it goes back to what Radha is saying as well, is there is some great backstories with women and how they've been able to achieve whatever they've wanted to do. Because it's always been a little bit harder than it has been for the males. And there's an interesting drama that kind of unfolds with that, and how you kind of learn a little bit more about that person, that culture, and obviously whatever they're interested in. So Rebel Girls is hoping that I think in the next 5 years they'll hit 50 million kids around the world. At the moment, I think they've hit around 12 million, and obviously things are starting to happen a little bit more now in India, which I think is a no-brainer. And certainly with role models like Smriti and the rest of women's sport within India is certainly a growing industry.
And sports is such a intercultural binder. I think that's really the best place to start.
Hello guys, this is paid promotion for Sequin. So Sequin is one of the companies legally licensed under the Indian Amusement and Gaming Corporation. The lottery is famous game in the website and easy to play. Then they have different games like Top Hits, Sports. They have BTI and Saba Sports game where you can play different games like cricket, football and many more, like casino, slot, games and catch fish. So to check more, see our description and download Sequin and get 100 rupees bonus.